To start, press any key. Where's the any key? I see esc, catarl, and pigup. There doesn't seem to be any key.
In-game tutorials are really hard for any developer to make because they've got to cater to so many different kinds of people, from the brand new players to the series veterans. So, in this video, I reached out to the Reddit and the forums to see what they had to say on the topic, what they would like to see from the tutorials in Ashes of Creation. And I got some fantastic answers, and I'm going to try and go through as many as possible. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to be giving my own thoughts and how I would design the in-game tutorials for Ashes of Creation. Let's get started. When it comes to tutorials, the most common reply that I got was the need for it to be optional and repeatable. As said very well by Akabert on the forums, in general, an option to skip the tutorial and an option to activate again at any stage. Different people learn at different paces, so being able to repeat the tutorial for some and then skip it for others is very important for that gameplay flow. For the more complex systems, a lot of people wanted to see an information codex. This is a web page sort of done offline that players can refer back to get more information on the in-depth systems. As Nathan Strife on the Reddit says, there's two things I'd like to see by launch: a codex menu with in-depth details about every mechanic, and optional quests that are easy to locate that give the basic information needed on all the different mechanics. Yes, a offline codex that can be referred to at any point is very important. Hyper JCT on the Reddit also brings up a fantastic point when regards to these systems. I'm hoping the system are intuitive enough that you don't need complex tutorials. As far as tutorials, I'm hoping they're short and simple and give you the opportunity to learn the system through a safe and simple. Yes, I 100% agree. The simpler you can make the systems themselves and the easier you can make it to navigate the UI, the less complex the tutorials need to be. There were a couple of other replies that I want to just briefly touch on. First of all, a couple of people didn't want any hand-holding. As Vane on the forum says, I talked about this a few times before, but I don't like the idea of in-game tutorials. They just amount to hand-holding quests. To me, hand-holding is where you constantly supply the information and tell the player what to do at every single point, rather than letting them figure it out for themselves. And yes, I agree that too much hand-holding can be a bad thing. You want to let the players figure things out for themselves at some point. Give them the basic information, tell them a feature exists, but then let them figure out how to apply that information on their own. A few people wanted group gameplay tutorials, and there were references to the Hall of Novices in Final Fantasy XIV and WildStar's Proto Games Academy. I love this quote by Elo on the forums though with regards to group play. He says, "The first time I was in a group in an MMO, I was quite nervous not to do anything wrong, and the first time grouping was when I first encountered the need/greed loot system. My intuitive thinking was that I only received the loot that I need, and I did not want to be greedy, so I always clicked need. People started getting angry, so after that I just passed on everything. So I would suggest including a tutorial that includes some aspects of being in a group, including loot rules." So a couple of things here. Yes, I agree that having an explanation of what the various loot systems do is important. However, when it comes to these in-game grouping tutorials, I tend to find that they focus entirely on the game mechanics. So things like threat management or avoiding AoE or healing, etc. That's all well and good. They very rarely teach you, though, things like group etiquette and what the players expect of each other. mostly because this is designed by the players and it's organically grown and it varies from game to game. In this aspect, I would put this in with the codex. So the way I would design it is when you join a group for the first time, a little pop-up on your screen appears and says, "You've just joined a group." Click on this button to go to the codex to learn more about group gameplay mechanics, and in there would be information on how the loot systems work and how threat works and all of that jazz. And you can apply this to many other systems as well. For example, first time you enter a node, little pop-up appears, you have entered the node. Click on this button to learn more about the node system. There you go, simple as that. Really unobtrusive as well, so players that just want to ignore it can just ignore it. And then if they want to learn more, they can just click the little button and go to the codex. As easy as that. Banana Beginning on the Reddit also brings up a fantastic point. My favorite types of tutorials don't stop the game and make you click through a bunch of stuff. Yeah, that's just terrible. And the sad thing is that there are games like that literally stop you in the middle of gameplay, in the middle of combat, just tell you a piece of information that at that time you don't need. You don't need to know everything right off the bat. Beekeeper on the forums follows this up by saying, "What an in-game tutorial should not be. A giant pop-up that displays a wall of text. Adding 2 GIFs does not help. Nobody likes reading those, and they are awful for retaining any kind of information." And he refers back to Final Fantasy XIV, which I agree, for the beginning of the game tutorials, is far too text heavy. You've got these big pop-ups that come on the screen, and it's just a wall of text. Nobody's going to read that, and even if you do read it, you're not going to remember it, so the information is pointless to you. So with that said, how would I design the beginning tutorial? In my opinion, short and sweet is the answer, and literally the very basics. We're talking basic character movement, camera control, accepting and completing quests, and basic combat. That, to me, is all you need right at the beginning. What I'd like to see, though, since this is 2021, I'd like to see games expand a little bit more into tailored tutorials. We've seen this in other games in the past, but I really like it to be expanded into the MMORPG genre. So, for example, let's say you have a new player. They've been fighting some monsters, and one of the monsters drops an item that the player can equip. Okay, now the player, if they're a new player, they may not realize that they have bags that items go into and that they can equip items from their bags. So, what do? If the player goes a length of time without opening their bags and equipping that item, you have a little pop-up that says, "Did you know that you can click on this button to open your bags and view items, and then equip those items?" Simple as that. If the player does it on their own, then the pop-up doesn't appear. Suddenly you have tailored the experience to the player. A veteran player will never see that tutorial because they don't need it, because they know what they're doing, whereas a brand new player will have that tutorial. Finally, let's just go back to the group gameplay a little bit. One thing I'd like to see is death recaps for the group gameplay. For example, let's say the group is fighting a dragon. Melee DPS, new player, doesn't really know what they're doing, stands in front of the dragon, gets hit by a breath attack and dies. At this point, a little pop-up would appear. Say, "Do you want to see the death recap?" You click that button, brings up the death recap and says something along the lines of, "You were hit by the dragon's breath attack. Stand on the dragon's side or behind them to avoid the attack." Simple as that. And you can do this for lots of different mechanics, and in doing so, I'm hoping that this would inform more players about the game, why they died, and allow them to improve in the future. So that pretty much wraps up this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more MMORPG related content. For now though guys, have a fantastic day and I will see you next time.